Good afternoon, folks, and welcome into the Senate Committee on Government Operations Committee meeting of Wednesday, May 13th, 2026. We are going to flip-flop the agenda a bit. We were fortunate in some respect to be able to get off the floor in time for people to have lunch and still make it here by 1 o'clock. So even though the agenda calls for us to be talking about what will be in our possession probably tomorrow or the next day, which is the Canton Charter, we're going to start today with S324, which is the Act relating to legislative operations and government accountability. And as a committee, we agreed that we would take H67, which is a still active bill, and strike it, and then add the provisions to that bill with what you all hopefully have draft 1.2 of H67. I know it's a little complicated, and there'll be yellow highlights in your printout so we can go over the changes. And Tim, welcome in. Tim Devlin's with us, our legislative counsel, and you can walk us through what we asked you to do.
Absolutely happy to. Thank you very much for having me, committee members. Again, for the record, my name is Tim Devlin, legislative counsel. So draft 1.2. I'll be just kind of going back and forth between the two as necessary. That is foreign language, but all the updates have been highlighted for ease of reference, and I'm just going to go into more details under each one. So the first, we see purpose and findings. It just said purpose before. There are some findings in here, so the editor has decided to actually include the word findings there to match above. And then we see subsection A is where we have that statement of purpose in the bill. Subsection B, lower down on page 1, line 17, add a new header here, just assembly finds. And that's where we have the findings. So the language, but the definitions are kind of the statements, the finding statements about what government accountability means and what government oversight means. Those stay the same, but they're just slightly restructured so that it matches the purpose and findings section properly. The next part of the bill, so we're trying to get more substantive factors. So we have section 2, and here's where we actually create the Joint Government Oversight and Accountability Committee. We have the to be added in section 2 VSA 9, step 1, creation of this committee. And we'll go to subsection B, breaking across the page, page 3, where we have its membership. So we have the committee shall be composed of 8 members, and now we kind of have 3 different requirements for each of those members. We have the 4 from the House and 4 from the Senate. Then we go to 2, which will now read not more than 2 of the committee's House members and not more than 2 of the committee's Senate members shall be from the same party. And then we have 3, which is where we have the most new language, which will state the committee shall include at least 1 member from each major political party, as described by, that's where we find the definitions of what political party is, and at least 1 independent member who's not affiliated with any major minor political party. And then we have the committee's House members and the committee's Senate members may not necessarily both include 1 member from each major political party and 1 independent member.
Wow, that's a lot to swallow.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand.
So this is how, as written, the effect will be 8 members total, 4 coming from the House, 4 coming from the Senate. Of each of those kind of groups, people as the House members and Senate members, not more than 2 can be in the same party. But it could be all 4 could be from different parties if wanted. And then number 3, we have it so that between the 2, there has to be a member of all major political parties and an independent. But, although an independent could be put on from the House members and the Senate members, doesn't necessarily have to be that, just so long as it's one or the other. Same for representation of all 3 political parties.
Okay, so yes, Senator.
Yeah, so I'm making a little diagram for myself. So because it's saying like that of the four, because if you did it without requiring if each side had to put someone forward, then it would be 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, 2 independents, 2 progressives. Is how it would have to be. But since we're not requiring that, it could be.
That's what I'm not understanding.
Yeah, that's where I'm getting confused.
If you have,
There just aren't that many, like, it would automatically have to be it.
No,
It would-
it could be a house member.
Okay, so that's what it is allowing. So the Senate doesn't have to send a progressive, but there has to be a progressive. So it would be out of like 5 people for the progressives and out of like 80 people for the Republicans and out of like 100 and something for the Democrats. And then we have what, like 5 independents? And we don't have an
I
independent
think there's
senator.
2.
There's 2, so they'd have to send someone from the House. Would have to be the independent.
I think.
So they'd have to pick of those 2. I just don't
Pretty
see.
prescriptive for very few people.
Yeah, I guess my concern is this seems like it's already hard to get people to serve on stuff. And when you limit the amount of people who are eligible for that role, while we might be short up with our progressive, I think it's unlikely we would, of the 2 independents, if they didn't get one of those 2 independents from the House side, they'd be out. They would have, because we don't have any independents on the Senate side.
So you wouldn't have anyone.
Yeah, so what would happen if there was not an independent who wanted the role, or not a progressive, or any of
They're
it?
appropriate. I mean, they A, may not want it, and B, they might not be appropriate.
Yeah,
They get
that's,
stuck with having to do something. I think it's too prescriptive. I think that people just have to be thoughtful about balance. And if we put in something that says thoughtful about balance, that should be enough. I really think that otherwise we're very prescriptive.
I agree, but I was also trying to understand just generally that section in reality, what was happening. I don't necessarily have an opinion on it, but I do think if I'm trying to play out the scenario in my head, I think it would be difficult to get the sorted amount of people based on the needs and participation ability of a small group of people.
And I'm trying to reconcile lines 4, 5, and 6 with the subsection 3, which follows. So if no more than 2 can be from the same party on each side, you can't have 3 Republicans and 1 Democrat, or 3 Ds and 1 R.
No, you could have 2 Ds and 2 Rs coming from both sides, and then the smaller groups are not represented at all.
No, they would have to have an I and a
Well,
P.
the way it is current.
Yeah,
If we don't have of that limited group of people, if we don't have somebody interested and or got the expertise or on the right committee to serve, or you're kind of stuck.
I don't know how you reconcile subsection 2 with subsection 3.
subsection 2 will probably be less in play because of 3. So we have that, the 4 House, looking at 2, we have the 4 House and the 4 Senate.
Right.
And then, at maximum of those 2 kind of, we'll call them sub-parties here, there can only be 2 from any major political party. So at maximum, let's say the Senate, there could only be, let's say, maximum 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. If the House were to bring forward a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, and a progressive, that the math would work there. So that's as much, that's as if you were to maximize the major, if you were to minimize the number of major parties on one side.
We're on page 3.
Right.
So now,
Well, they work.
I just read through all of the.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
I thought there were only 2, Lipsky and,
Laura.
And on you. And then, and I didn't actually see who the 4th one was. Like I said, I didn't read names. I just counted.
I think there are 4 at the moment. You're right.
okay, so definitely, but we don't have any on the Senate side, so it'd have to be one of those 4 people. Ann Donahue, Laura Sibilia, Jed Lipsky, or this 4th person
pending the election.
pending
I
the
mean,
election. True.
But
And
then
there
you'd
could
have
be-
to change it every time
Yeah,
you have a biennium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that gets a little awkward because then you have no institutional knowledge. You're just continually replacing people. If there was a larger pool of candidates from a progressive or an independent party, I think this could work, but right now it's very limited, I think. And I know you had brought this up, Senator Yagowski, so I appreciate Tim's attempt to satisfy your concerns, but I don't know. It seems like the House is always going to be, well, I shouldn't say it that way. At the moment, the Senate would not be able to do much about independence because there aren't any. We do have, do you consider, I shouldn't ask this that way. Are there senators? Now I sound like I'm on the floor. You can't use the pronoun you. Are there senators who have both designations
Oh.
counted as a member of each
Yeah.
party?
Yes,
Yeah, who's a DR right now?
but there are
I don't
no
know.
DRs
I don't
and
think
they're,
there are any
and they're
DRs.
all, they're
Oh.
all DPs.
Well, I'm a PD.
Ah,
You're a P, oh, you're the P.
so there's only one at the moment.
There's one,
But there are DPs, but they,
but they would be considered.
And it would
Democrats.
count if you had any minor party associated.
I don't know. I think that's a question
Jim,
for
that's
the
a question for
council.
Jim.
So, sorry, the question was.
So if
how do
you
count
were,
minor parties?
yeah, if you're running as a DP or a PD, like what is your affiliation? Could you be counted as the progressive
I think so.
if you had it as your secondary party?
It's interesting. So if you were to have somebody who was, so those are two
Yeah.
major parties.
Oh,
So, if that would satisfy the progressive,
Yeah.
but then it would limit the number of Democrats that you have.
exactly.
That's what I'm saying.
So one person could be, so there could be, let's say we take it to the Senate again, Senate, so party would be 4. If you have a PD on there, at maximum, you can only have one other Democrat.
Oh, so then that would mean, oh, wow, that would really limit us on this side.
That's not how it often plays out, because I know like on conference committees, I've been on conference committees that sort of read the same way, not more than 2 for the same political party, but I've been on conference committees with 2 Democrats and me.
Yeah, okay, interesting.
Why can't we come up with language that talks about maybe thoughtfully balances, it's too pejorative, but balances, all 3 major parties and independents in the appointments.
That's what we're trying to
I mean,
do.
that's what we're
I
trying
know,
to
but I hate to say that and leave it alone.
More aspirational than prescriptive
Yes.
in that way. Like,
Yes, I
Whereas
think it needs
to
to
the
be,
extent practicable,
that was the other word I was thinking, to the extent practicable to, and to balance the appointments, in a thoughtful way. I don't think it, you don't like lists. And what else? You don't like lists and numbers and things, but I think I'm trying to remember all the things.
let's abolish numbers.
Right, but I do think it can't be this prescriptive. I think this is too prescriptive. And may not serve us in the final analysis, because you may have a progressive who's totally not interested in this and doesn't want to be appointed to it. And this, you may have a landlord who doesn't serve on Senate co-ops or. Anyway, I think we need to make it balanced and thoughtfully balanced, taking into account all 3 major parties and the independents.
Yeah, I agree. It's just going back. I mean, I remember years ago, well, it wasn't that long ago, like Senator Starr used to get an R and D. Senator Ingles has done it before.
I know.
At one time, state's attorney Aluzzi had all 3.
There you go.
Star was a D.
Really?
But he get the R endorsed. He also had a
He may
right.
have
as DP.
Maybe wasn't listed as a DR.
I just,
I know he got it. Well, just like Peter Welch gets it too, but he doesn't use it.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree with the sentiments expressed by Senators Clarkson and Ashley White and Mobley. So I think your charge now would be to go back and take a look at sub 3 and come up with more aspirational language that is less prescriptive, while still making the hope or the desire that we at least get one of those 8 to represent what some would consider a minority view.
I think it's very important to have that balance, better balance. I completely agree, and I'm glad Tanya brought it up.
Mhm.
But I think in our efforts, an aspirational.
Yeah.
Statement would be good.
And so something along the lines of it's practical, the committee will be composed of a balance of
The three major parties and the independents. It should be balanced to reflect the composition of the General Assembly. How about that?
Well, then that would be,
proportion.
You can't do the,
Zero.
that would be the opposite direction of what
Yeah.
we're trying to do.
Oh.
Because if it was proportional,
And flipping it.
well, proportional would give an outsized,
Right.
I think the point is an
I
outside.
know balance reflecting the composition. I didn't say that. Oh, I see what you.
What was your suggestion?
I can wordsmith, but just a balance of, and then we state the wanted. And so major parties, independent candidates. And I don't know if there are minor parties right now.
I don't think so. We had a libertarian once, but he left.
Not that long ago, even.
Who was that?
He was the.
Representative Sams.
Yes, yes, damn it.
That's not a major party.
No, it's a minor party.
Yeah,
Right, which is what I'm asked.
Yeah.
so major parties, independents.
Okay.
So, and just a quick note, what was removed from here was a requirement for the members, certain members to come from the government operations.
Yep.
That's right. We have then, let's see, there was subsection C where we have language about electing the chair and our officers. What was removed from here was the requirement to keep minutes. Also, the quorum being 5. I could add that in, but that's assumed would be the majority of members. That was constitute quorums.
Majority
Present.
plus, oh no, never mind. Never mind. I was doing bad committee math.
Then we have D, which now states this is how regarding how often they should meet.
Mhm.
The committee shall meet as early as practical or practicable maybe each biennium following the appointment of all its members and shall meet thereafter no fewer than 4 times a year.
That sounds good to me.
Then
People think. We don't need it.
so next, just noting 972 at the top of page 4. There's highlights in the next few pages just with the renumbering of our notes. That's because the subpoena power was removed, and that was a whole subsection, so he's going to reorganize everything else. So the rest of that hasn't changed until we get to the definition of what is an issue of significant public concern. That's at the bottom of page 4, page 5. And we have those few categories, which could be anyone qualifying. And the affects the state as a whole, affects the vulnerable population. New language in C, cost the state more than $50 million versus $100 million or more. And then D, implicates a substantial failure of state government oversight or accountability. It was a serious failure. Then
I'm still worried about that. I mean, I have to be honest.
I do the 50 million.
The $50 million programs that have big impact on people that may not rise to the cost of 50 million, like VHIP, let's say. Let's say there was some issue with the Vermont Housing Infrastructure Program, improvement program.
It doesn't have to meet all of the criteria, it can just meet one of them.
Exactly.
So I think that that's not a limiter, it's a,
That's a good reminder.
that,
Yep.
I had a similar concern.
a issue, in order for issues to be selected for consideration, it has to fit one of these categories, it can be any one of them, but it has to stay within bounds.
I think we,
Yeah, others include arise from previously enacted legislation or constitutes a failure to adequately respond to state and federal audits as well.
Did that come out of the summer rule? It did. Okay.
The audit one?
I think all of them did.
I think that we're in
The original
Right.
list that the summer group put forward a couple of years ago was drafted, I believe, by the chairs of that group to reflect the work that was done.
And then, the previous section 6, which had to do with recommendations for state grant process improvements, has been removed and with that, there's a new provision that added to, the Vermont, Administrative Procedures Act, specifically having to do with rule adoption. This carries over, or I should say it replicates, the language that we find for, party reports, inserts it into, party rulemaking, essentially. So we'll have the language, at the kind of top of page 8 will look very similar to the top of page 10 here. And we'll now read,
Oh,
if it becomes apparent to any agency, department, or other entity directed by the General Assembly to adopt a rule that the agency, department, or entity will be unable to do so within the required time, the adopting agency or department or entity shall inform, if applicable, the relevant legislative committee's current chair, the committee assistant, and the office of legislative counsel, which rule adoption will be late, why, and when the rule is anticipated.
So how does that differ from page 8?
This reporting agency, he said, he called it something different.
One is about rules,
That's what
one is
it's
about
saying.
reports.
Ah,
Days are.
It's the same language, but it's about rules and.
This adopting agency versus
Yes.
reporting agency.
Yes, reports are issued and rules are adopted. That's the. Yeah,
That was the only scan of.
yeah, the, should read it. Here I don't. Okay. That's it.
Pretty significantly pared down from
Yeah.
324.
but very, nonetheless, it's good.
Page 8 and 9 are, highlighted. Did we just talk about that or?
No, this is, I just wanted to add the rest of the statute that's being inserted into, just to provide some additional context. So this has.
Statutory context.
Okay, so we're not changing, this is existing law.
Right.
Yes,
Okay.
3 VSA, section 846, revenues for procedural failures. I figured that'd be the. Place. How is this? But yeah, the rest of the bill is not a big change, or the rest of the statute, that's 3 VSA 846 is not big change.
All right.
Great.
Yes.
And, committee doesn't feel it's necessary, the rest of these, can be removed. It's fine. We don't have to display it that much inside. Bill.
There is a per diem here somewhere, I think, right? Like page 3, lines 19 and 20. Okay, is there anything else we want to add to the bill? Or besides the composition that we talked about already, any changes people want made?
To this bill specifically.
Yeah,
Well, I will say I did I'm looking at H67 and I know that we're not doing anything with that.
well,
What is this bill now?
That is
But-
special.
That is this bill now, but the version that the House sent us, we're not really doing. This is a strike all. We're not doing anything that's actually in it.
well, I mean, I guess we can open that discussion again. I thought, had decided as a committee that charged
Because of the appropriation.
JFO with doing the work in essence. And sort of the legislature with a hands-off is a posture. But yes, it did include a $300,000 appropriation, which when we spoke with the chair next door, said, not gonna be able to do that. And I felt that it was unfair to task joint fiscal with another responsibility if we weren't gonna get paid.
Yeah, okay.
So.
Yeah. I
But if you-
respect that. No, I mean, I guess spoke to some House members who were very passionate about it and were surprised that we weren't moving forward with it when I explained the appropriations thing. They had felt that there was still hope.
Oh.
There was still a
Well, that'll
small
be-
heartbeat.
Well, then they'll be discussing
I-
conference.
Yes.
Also discussed with House members and tried to, oh, I don't live about to say squash that hope.
Okay, okay.
Oh.
It's not because I necessarily want to squash them. I said I have also spoken to House members and I've done what I can to squash that vote.
Oh,
There's no pulse.
Senator Chris.
Good to know.
I think fundamentally, this will be more effective if legislators are engaged with what's working and not working in state government, rather than yet another paid entity that's telling us what's working and not working. I think our knowing it and absorbing it and being able to advocate it among our peers and colleagues will be much more effective than being told from an external. I mean, even though they're part of us, an external, unless I think it's very important for legislators to engage in this kind of review and to own it. And own it and then do with it and then fix it in whatever way they need to fix it.
Senator Morton.
I agree. I question where it's gonna go, because I think you guys have dealt with this before.
Yeah,
What do you mean where it's gonna go? It's gonna
Well,
go back to the house.
No, you've tried doing this before.
Yes.
even if we're gonna pass, there's still the reluctance on the part of many in the General Assembly to be on this committee. Because up until now, it has sort of spun wheels, got stuck in the mud.
For how long? I'm curious, I don't know.
2014 anyway.
I mean,
Diane Snelling, I remember, was on the first hand. Okay, but it was actually quite active and engaged for a while. And then it hit the doldrums, I think is fair to say. And I don't remember when that was, but it was pretty active and engaged.
I was on it for probably 8 years.
Exactly.
And then it sort of just stopped.
But was it effective? Did you get things through that? I'm just
We
curious.
created all those charts and dashboards and
No,
Yes,
I don't know that there was one bill that eventuated.
I don't agree with you. I think that we're much better educated about focusing on results, requiring measures in our bills. I think there were lots of things that we took on board. What it didn't have is the mechanism for identifying the issues and programs and really just focusing on very specific programs and not just how we did business. You really focused, I think, on how we did business and how we could do it better. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
That's all those wonderful lists and suggestions and questions we were supposed to ask with every bill. That was great. And I actually taken it on board, and I think a lot of us have. So I don't think it was all for naught. But I think this will be much more program focused rather than process
and
focused.
he'll share it, I take it.
Of course, he's volunteering.
I will happily serve on this committee. I feel very passionate about government accountability, which is why I ended up on the summer committee.
Which is shocking to all of us who serve with you.
I
I'm just
know.
sure of it. And if you made room for an alumni member, I would serve. Because often alums have better respect.
No,
I-
you just got done telling me. Just really said. Has to be somebody from the legislature.
I can't speak to previous GAC because I never served on it, but what we did do in summer GAC was look at the charge and look at, we're not recreating the exact same thing.
No, you're not. And you're giving it a different, more focused charge. So I'm hopeful. But I'm a live in hope kind of person. So
I would be at a loss to come up with one bill that was enacted as a direct result of what we did for 10, 12, 15 years. Yes, we were more aware of what we should ask, but there are very few bills inside which is a mechanism for saying, okay, it's 3 years since we passed it. How are we doing? How much have we spent? What are the outcomes that we can directly attribute to this? I have yet to see a bill.
I know, and that drives me crazy.
I would argue
Oh,
I would argue-
Currents.
every time we put in a pilot or a sunset, it actually has that same effect. And then we have to
Oh,
review
okay.
how it's done. We have to review its performance. And
Okay.
But that's why I want this, is we're tasking this committee to actually go back and look at that stuff, because I have actually in judiciary more than a year made the suggestion that we should be putting that in every bill we're passing. Is this actually doing?
Well, he's bringing up a point I was gonna make. I would think that the committees of jurisdiction would want to do that.
well,
But they don't, and they don't have really the capacity. to
and
have
then
it
I've done it all the time.
Oh, no, they have this, they can put in the sunrise report, you can
Yes,
put in the sunset, you can.
We
do
did,
all
we
those
have done that
things,
in a bunch of our bills, what we want to see what's happening.
But
And nothing in this is precluding the committee of jurisdiction from doing that work. It is
True.
just ensuring that someone in the building is going to look at some of these really critical things.
I hope it works,
Me too.
because you're gonna be on it.
I mean, let's be honest, all too often after our floor report. And now the question is, shall the bill be read a third time, and it passed, you go, oh, thank God that's over. What's next? And that's how we approach day-to-day activity here. We rarely say 2 years later, you know, that was kind of an interesting bill. I wonder how that worked out. We
So-
just don't do it.
This is gonna be more focused then on the policy committees versus,
Well,
the budget committee. I'm just thinking out loud, because lots of those policies are going to drive some costs. Versus appropriations, what are you gonna do there, or on transportation, I don't know.
You're not gonna fund programs that aren't succeeding. That's in part what this is looking at is if a program is failing and this committee shines light on that,
Yeah.
they're not gonna continue funding it.
That would be the hope. But if the committee comes
Yeah.
forward and says, hey, we did
That's the
this
best.
deep dive into this smoking cessation program, and it looks like 80% of the people who went through it are still smoking.
so
We would probably then say, okay, we should do something different.
And what if they don't?
But they will, because they won't be funded.
No, I'm saying, what if a committee pushes back on this committee that you just created? And say, no, we don't accept whatever you came up with because of A, B, and C.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
We'll cross that bridge when we get. to it.
Okay,
I think you have to cross that bridge when you get to it. It can't assume too much into the future, but I would hope that this committee would be effective in reviewing programs that we have done that may or may not be succeeding. And the Ethics Commission is a great example of one of the issues one of the things we've taken up, and how can we make it more effective?
Give it money.
Yeah. And yeah, but I mean,
We know the answer to that.
we probably could, but
I would suggest it'd be rare if there was a program that was really working well, that it would fall under anybody's, in other words, you're gonna look for a problem more than you are for something that's working well, I think.
I think maybe true in some instances, but I also think here's another piece of landmark legislation that we passed. It was the childcare subsidy.
Yes.
And going to look back and say, like,
How
how
do
many
we-
more spots are there? How is it doing? Are there ways we can improve it? Like, I think there are definitely
Yeah.
big pieces of legislation that we would go in, not just because we think there's a problem, but because we genuinely want to know, how's it doing?
and we're doing that in health and welfare.
yeah, so, yeah, we got a lot of information.
Right, but again, I think that's a good example. The CHIP program, which got set up very fast. How's it doing? I would
The VHIP,
be hip.
I think you could definitely make a case for that,
Yeah,
because there's physical proof. This residence was horrible. We put money into it. People are living in it now and they're happy. I mean, that, to me, that's an easy
Yeah,
one-to-one
back online.
correlation.
Yeah.
Some of the other programs we do, like the smoking, see, I agree. Because the dashboard showed that there was a trajectory that were fewer people smoking. But I don't know whether that was because of legislation or because the American Cancer Society was doing a hell of a job.
probably a little bit of everything. It takes evidently 7 touches to ensure progress. So, it's marketing, it's
Oh,
all those things. It's everything has to why people aren't smoking anymore.
well, anyway, this is,
Well, you should definitely be on the committee then.
and by then you'll be quite an alumni.
Yeah.
Alumnus, singular, Latin,
I'll take
a
whatever.
plural ends in an I. Yeah, well, I think these are good discussions to have as we move forward with this. Because I think there will be people, when it gets to the floor, that go, oh, here we go, that kind of thing. I'm not planning on reporting this, by the way, but
Yeah,
I hope Tanya reports it. It's her bill.
although she shouldered quite a lot of the load in
I
here.
think she would love to report this.
You are also welcome to report it if you would like, Senator Clarkson.
That's what I was thinking, as an alumnus of,
Your last.
but we'll see.
article.
We won't vote it out this week, so
I'm,
We have more time.
good, well,
Yeah, I know, you
some
got
of
a
it,
lot of
some of
those
it,
left.
we're deep in it at the moment, but I'm happy to help.
Okay.
All I can think of is channeling OV and results-based accountability, which is where this began.
Which we don't talk about. RBA's like.
I talk about it because I remember it.
Well, no, I do too. Well, we came up with a different term for it.
I know you.
So these are recommendations. So the committee recommends.
The
Yes.
committee is tasked with, we have a kind of an annual report.
But in that report, and yes,
Here's what we did, here's what we found.
here's what we looked at, this program, we recommend that, whatever, you can make recommendations.
Tim, do all the oversight committees like judicial oversight, childcare oversight, all those ad hoc committees, there actually aren't that many of them. This would be one, I think actually this one will be one of the most important ones. Are they all charged with having to do a report every year?
Pretty sure that's a good question. I'd have to look at.
I'm not sure they are.
Don't know.
Would you be kind enough to find out?
Absolutely.
Because. I mean, I think we should, we could be charged with making recommendations to the General Assembly on program, on whatever your recommendations are gonna be. But having to do a report every year is, we know about that.
That'll be the next one, the legislative reporting when it gets docked.
Yeah,
No,
right.
we're not doing that anymore.
Oh, we don't need that one.
None of that, this is most working on example.
Well,
Yeah, we're overseeing.
that's our job.
I'm just reading the.
Yeah.
We don't have programs.
Yeah, because we passed the laws and on the executive branch to implement the laws, and one of the aspects of accountability is implementation.
Right.
I mean, I think we could dive in and let's say it is an instance where something is not working, and we dive in and we look at, well, was it implemented how we intended? And the answer is yes, and then we would have to dive in and look at like, okay, well, maybe this is just bad policy. So I think that you could, there's, and NCFL give us sort of the list of like, was it implemented as intended? Does it use good evidence? Like, so yes, and I think it is a lot of oversight on implementation, but I think there are definitely places where it's oversight on what we have done as well.
It's kind of like a LCAR committee, not on steroids, but to kind of take a different, like they're responsible for deciding whether an implementation of a rule through the rule is consistent with what the intent of the statute was. And this is sort of opening that up even more, I think.
Do you want to do it so that it lasts for like a biennium and then you look at?
And then we look at whether or not the accountability committee
Correct.
is functioning as
Correct.
intended.
Actually, do we?
I don't think if one biennium is enough time for it to create the structures and do enough.
Especially if you meet,
Especially,
you're gonna meet more than 4 times a year.
That was a minimum.
So,
that was a minimum.
That's a minute.
Because I also,
You're right.
this is one small aspect of the larger suite of things that the summer committee suggested as a
Okay.
starting point. So I think if we looked at it after a biennium saying, well, we did 1/10 of what they suggested we do and it's not working, well, maybe we should do more than one. So I think
Maybe we should sunset it after 2 or 3 biennium and sunset it in 6 years and, see what it's at, how it's accomplished, what
Who
it's
would be
accomplished.
against that?
Who's think that doesn't work?
Because sunsets do mean we review something pretty fully.
what is our typical sunset cycle for reports? And we used to do this on a bunch of committees.
5 years.
There's
Is it
Yeah,
5?
there's a review that's triggered after 5 years, and the report repeal bill that we just had, that's a 5-year basis, but nothing happens automatically, and review isn't necessarily guaranteed. We just put it onto a list and bring it to the committee's jurisdiction, and then the chairs kind of take it from there. To Senator Morley's question, quickly about who the committee reports to, just says on an annual basis, they issue a report, so.
I'm just wondering if they should come to GovOps is the
Yeah,
one.
I think we're the parent of it.
That's what I mean. It has been for years, it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
So
Not for nothing.
should the report come
If there is
back
one.
to both House GovOps and Senate?
Yes, I think so.
I think, let's see if a report is the right thing. I think maybe an update would be good instead of a report. Let's see if the other oversight committees issue reports, because I don't think we should issue a report if the others aren't. I think we could come up with an update and recommendations for the biennium at the beginning of each biennium, which would be good.
What about a sunset date?
And then I would put sunset out for 6 years. I would do it after 3 biennium, because it's not gonna get set up until after the election.
Mhm.
So you're gonna lose some time. I would say giving it 6 years gives it enough time to really sink or swim.
Well, so giving it the full 6 years would have it sunsetting in 33.
Well, we could have it sunset in 31, but I think that's short.
I think that's short. I think,
Okay, make it 5 years, but whatever. I think it needs more than,
no, I think 6 years feels,
give it a full 2-3 biennium and then see.
and so that's that, what's that sunset out
I
in
think that would.
33?
January or July?
I would
We
suggest
said-
July, so it gives the legislative
Yeah,
body the year to work, to
To see
take
it.
testimony and look at
From
it.
you.
all right.
But
So issue updates. And then we can have what the updates entail versus a report.
let's
Yeah,
discuss that after you find out what you could have find out about the other oversight.
And then the sunset date you got. Okay, anything else? We'll take this up again next week, probably. Don't forget tomorrow, we're gonna be, unfortunately, in rain, so we probably won't see a lot of the outside.
Is there a lot of the
Vehicles.
outside?
Well, yeah, there's an all hazard thing and,
They might have a Vector.
Oh, that's, I'm very excited.
I mean, maybe it won't rain, I don't know. But if it does, we'll be inside. There's a
Alright.
really interesting lab where they do, do rape kits and, DNA.
Yeah.
You know, at a crime scene, they'll show
Very
you how they take the fingerprints or whatever they take and DNA.
This is what the battle seems to be in the House Judiciary. Is it over the forensics lab, Tanya?
Yeah, there is a battle.
I don't know why there's battle over it, but there is.
For a forensics lab? No, it's
Well,
a forensic
Silly.
Yeah, that's different.
This is where I got super.
That's in
oh,
correction.
the difference between.
a forensic lab is where they might test blood spatter evidence or rape kits. This forensic facility is a jail where they're gonna lock up people who are mentally,
So we dealt with health and welfare.
they're very different things.
Yeah. Why it's called that exactly.
Yeah.
That's a
So-
terrible name for it. That is a terrible name.
Perhaps that's intentional.
Okay, so next up, we're gonna take a break here in a second. Tim will be with us, hopefully Representative Byron, Josh Hanford from VLCT, and the town clerk of treasurer of Ham will be here to talk about their bill. The charter. And for those of you that weren't here earlier, the rules committee did meet and it's been released to us, but it won't appear until tomorrow on the notice calendar. So technically, we can't put the bill number on the agenda.
Penn,
Canton is north of, it's the.
Oh, I know it.
East, oh,
Virginia. It's near-
yes.
It's the lakeside part. of
Oh,
Virginia.
I thought it was inland.
It's right on the lines.
I know that.
Okay.
I have friends who are living in Penn, moved from Woodstock to Penn, so they.
Can you
live.
imagine?
I know, from Disneyland to Lake.
Hopefully not looking for votes in Canton.
I'm not looking for votes anymore, thank God.
Okay,